and it hasn't really been a problem. And today we're going to see what happens when you do have a model with very high variance and how it affects your metrics across several cross-validations. So decision trees are very interesting, and they're generally split into two categories: classification and regression trees. First of all, before we get into that, objectives. I'll describe the output of a decision tree to someone. Essentially, if you don't have a data science background, to describe what it is. Describe how the algorithm works to create it. Use a binary event in decision tree. We'll do Titanic in scikit-learn at first, and then we'll move on to other stuff. We'll do a decision tree visualization and determine optimal tree sizes and describe the strengths and weaknesses of the decision tree. So, what are decision trees? They are, I apologize for the crudity of the slides today. Yeah, that's it. There are a supervised learning technique that can be used for discrete and continuous. So classification and regression, they're very visually engaging and easy to interpret, I think even more so than a linear regression. The idea, and you'll see several of them, the idea is that you follow the tree from top to bottom, and all it truly is a series of decisions or questions about your data, which is very easy to explain to someone. Excellent model for someone transitioning into the world of data science. It is foundational to some even more powerful techniques. One of the lessons that we're going to have is called ensembling techniques, which is essentially a fancy word for putting models together. There is a very, very famous model called the random forest. Came out of the Bell Labs in the 80s, which is essentially several decision trees stuck onto each other. So many very complex methods have a foundation in decision trees. So which is why we learn decision trees first. They are prone to be high variance. Does anyone want to remind the class what high variance means? Bless you. What does it mean if a model has high variance?
Sensitive to the model changing based on the data.
It's very sensitive to change. It's very sensitive to the selection of data. Exactly. So if you choose another random sample of your data, your model will behave wildly different than it did the last time. Why? Because in a decision tree, there are some aspects of probability and randomness. So there are some aspects of randomness that can actually affect high variance. Random forests have a lot of randomness in it. They're even more high variance. But why do we like them? Because they have a much lower bias. We're very good at getting things right. Very good at getting things right if we have the right random sample. We're going to focus on what's called the Carter algorithm. So, boom, decision tree. This is a decision tree in a visual way. So here's the decision tree based on the Titanic data set. So if you're looking at it on your own laptops, it might be a little easier to see the words. Oh my God. What's happening? Okay. So as you go down the tree, it's choosing different decisions or questions based on your data. So the first question it's asking is, if you give it a row of data, the first question it asks is this person male or female? And if they're male, you go to the left. And if it's like a choose your own adventure, except you're not choosing it, the data's choosing it. If it's a female, you go to the right. So this person's a female. We go to the right. Notice I am now going to ignore this entire half of the tree, which is for men. I am now here because this woman is a female. All right, the next question at the top. Was this person in class 3 or 1 or 2? They were in class 3, so we go to the left. Or I'm sorry, let's assume they were in class 1 or 2. They have a 94% chance of survival. That's how the tree works. It's a series of questions that ends in a probability of being in a class. And this n, 121, is the literal number of people who match that description. Female and who were in class 1 or 2. Of the 121, 94% of them survived. But let's say this person was in class 3. This female was in class 3. Fine. Next question. Were they older than or equal to 37? If so, 0% chance. If they were younger than 37, okay, we still have a shot. There's another question. Do they have greater than or equal to 3 siblings? Then they have 20% chance. Will they have less than 3 siblings? Fine. Something else I want to ask. Age again. So the one thing about a decision tree is that you can ask a similar question more than once. You can ask about age, gender, whatever, more than once. So I'm going to ask about age again. Okay, well, they're less than 37. So let me break it down a little bit more. Are they older than or equal to 28 or less than 28? And then if they're less than 28, they say 62%. If they're higher than 28, 31%. So it's a series of questions, i.e. decisions, that it's making in order to make the best prediction that it can. This is, would you agree, is this a very easy model to explain to someone, especially in a business setting. If you're trying to talk to somebody about, what choices we should make, the decision tree tends to be a very easy way to visually show someone what it is that you should be thinking about. Great, question 1. Should we go with product A or B? Okay, if we go with A, what's the next choice? Okay, we launch it this year or next year. All right, we launch it next year. So we come over here. It was a very easy way to visualize decisions. Not only that, but the decision tree is one of the few models that actually provides a quantitative measurement of how important features are. So we've seen something similar before in linear regression. We could look at the p-values, for example, or just in general the coefficients to determine how influential variables are. But decision trees and random forests, as being an extension of decision trees, actually provide a literal number that says this is the most important variable because it was asked the most times or it led to the best answers. For example, here, class 3 or 1 or 2, that question made a really big difference. If you were in class 1 or 2, you automatically had a 94% chance of survival. So this question is a very, very important question. So class would be considered an important variable. Gender would likely probably be the most important variable. Why? Because it's the first thing it asked. So it classifies and categorizes important variables versus non-important variables. How does it do that? Using a metric called either Gini or entropy. There's 2 ways it makes this decision, and we're going to go over those as well. So far, makes sense what a decision tree is? Fair enough. So, put in more formal terms, made of interconnected nodes which acts as a series of questions, tests, decisions, i.e. is the passenger male or female, is the passenger older than 37 or less than 37, it's a bunch of decisions. Terminal nodes, the last book, called leaf nodes, terminal nodes, they show the output metric, the actual percentage of chance of survival. So, like I mentioned, how does the algorithm choose which variables are included on the tree? Why was gender first? Why not age first? So how is it making the decisions to decide where to put what? How does the algorithm choose where the variable should be located? And how does it choose when to stop? Stopping criteria is also interesting. Why 94%? Some of them ended on 20%. Is that good or not? How does it know when to stop asking questions? Because I could ask, okay, are they older than 28? Are they older than 29? Are they older than 30? It's like, how does it know when to stop asking questions? So now we're getting into to describe how it actually creates the decision tree. So different variables can be split. And the way the decision tree works is it tries several splits and determines which one is quote-unquote the best. We're going to define the best in a minute. So for example, I have up here 3 possible splits that I could have done initially. The first one is the one that you saw on the decision tree. If you choose male or female, and let's say I'm choosing out of 25 people, and I ask, are they male or female? Of the males, they had a 13% chance survival. Of the females, they had an 80% survival. That's one possible way I could have split up 25 people. Here's another way. I could ask you this question. Do they have less than 1 siblings, i.e. 0, or at least 1 siblings? If they had less than one sibling, they had a 39% chance. If they had greater than one, they had a 42% chance. The third option is class. If they were in class 3, they had a 23% chance. If they were in class 1 or 2, they had a 58% chance. I'll ask you right now, what do you think is the best split? I'm not defining best. I want to hear your definition of what you think is the best split. On what variable do you think I should split those 25 people? And again, remember the purpose. The purpose of all of this is to make a good prediction of whether or not someone will survive. Which of these splits do you think provides the most information into that question? Gender. Can I ask why?
Because you have the highest proportion split, I guess. You have it's most definitive, I guess.
Define definitive.
Make a decision on whether or not that they were, make a decision whether or not they died.
Fair enough. So, to me, clearly, I mean, you know that what's happening. When this says 80%, that means of the 10 females, 8 of them live. 2 of them die. I just want to make sure that that's pretty clear. Up here, 13%, that means of the 15 people, 2 of them, yes, of the 15 people, 2 of them die. That's how we interpret that. So you're saying gender because it gives the most definitive split, you're saying. Okay. Does anyone disagree? Just curious. Does anyone agree and have a different reason as to why? Why not this guy? Right here. Siblings. What's wrong with siblings? All for one thing, siblings provides a better number split. Whereas this is 15 to 10, this one's 13 to 12, the even split. Why isn't that one better? What's wrong with the middle split?
I guess you don't want to have a 50-50 chance, is it?
Well, this isn't the chance. This is just saying that 12 out of 25 people had at least one sibling or spouse. 13 out of 25 people had less than one, so 0. Of the 12 people, 42% of them survived, 39% of the 13 people survived.
Survival chances are fairly close.
Or what?
They're close, like they're similar. So
So
it
that-
doesn't make that much of a difference how many siblings they have more or less.
It's like being definitive, right? It doesn't really make a difference. That's really the key. It's the difference. So pretty much both of you nailed the head. Being definitive, not making a difference. The way the decision tree makes these decisions is by, okay, which split makes the most definitive difference? So for example, up here in gender, if I want to say with a certain degree of accuracy what percent chance someone will survive on the Titanic, if I choose this split, if I only look at this split, and someone says, okay, well, here's a person from first class, what's their chance of survival? They're in first class, what's their chance of survival? 58%. Might as well flip a coin. Honestly, 58%, might as well flip a coin. Now here, male or female? Alright, they're male. What's their chance of survival? That is definitively low. That's like, okay, that is a very good chance of not survival. So decision trees make these decisions by figuring out which splits make the biggest difference. Now, I keep saying this very vaguely, make the biggest difference. And the way we do it, I have a better picture of this later. Sorry, I have a better picture. Question?
And I was just thinking, like, maybe a more quantitative way of kind of tracking what I was thinking of is that if you multiply the percentage times the n, and you have, like, the biggest difference, that would be quantitatively distinguishing between, defining the...
Sure.
Yeah.
And this makes sense because we want a quantitative way to define this, and there is one. That is definitely one way to do it. There are 2 standard ways of defining what we call purity. Purity and also what's called information gain. So there's 2 ways of quantifying this in practice. One of them is calculated with the Gini index. The Gini index is a number between 0 and 1 and works in the following way. If your Gini index, and I'm going to define it with examples in a second, but just show you what the number is conceptually before I throw an equation at you. If your Gini index is 0.5, it represents an equal representation between both classes. If your Gini index is 0, it means there's a perfect separation. I.e., all of these people died, all of these people survived. It is a perfect separation of classes. So, for example, which is the purest split? Which of them split it the best?
Siblings.
Why siblings? Okay, so this is good. This is good. It's closest to 0.5 in these numbers, right? But I'm looking at these numbers. I'm looking at these numbers. If I split it on siblings, how pure was my split? In the sense that 39%, did that split up these 13 people a lot or a little bit? Not that much. It's not perfectly split. If this were a 100% chance, you'd be like, oh yeah, great. Because all 13 out of 13 of them lived. So that's tricky. Because we're not necessarily looking at how many people are in each split. We care mostly about the percentage of them that belong to the class. Yeah.
One more question. Why don't they add up to 100%? Was there just data missing?
I'm sorry?
Why don't they add up to 100%? Like 97 for gender, right? Some data points missing? Because
No.
okay.
No, because, so for example, there's 10 females, right? All it's saying is 8 of them died.
Oh, of course.
Or lived, I'm sorry. Here, 13% of them lived. Yeah, so they just shouldn't, they could, I guess, but they don't have to add up to 100. Here's an example. Okay. Before the split, let's say of 25 people, 10 people survived, 15 people died. Of those 25 people. This is before we split it on anything. Gender, siblings, whatever. So, right now, we can calculate a Gini coefficient. Right now we can, before the split. Because right now, I want to see how pure is the split as it stands. Because, as Freda mentioned earlier, I'm going to make the decision based on how much the purity changes after a split. So right now, let's calculate how pure this is now. So, what I'm going to do is, it's going to be 1 minus however many people are in each class, the proportion squared. So for this example, it's going to be 1 minus the survived divided by total squared minus how many people died divided by the total squared. And this will give me the Gini index between 0 and 1. So in this particular example, 1 minus 10 over 25 minus 13 over 25 squared is about 0.48. A 0.48, halfway between 0 and 1, is an indication that it's not very pure. Because as you can see it here, 10 out of 25, 15 out of 25. What would make this the purest possible? Well, if I have survived and died, what if 25 people survived and 0 people died? What would the Gini index be? 1 minus survived over total, 25 over 25 squared, minus 0 over 25 squared, which is what?
0.
Perfect. Pure. It is a very pure, because everyone's in one class and no one's in the other. Now, what if it were 12 and 13? Right? That's pretty much half and half. If it were 12 and 13, it'd be 1 minus 12 over 25 squared minus 13, over 25 squared, which, does someone have a calculator? I didn't actually do this beforehand, I should have. I'll estimate it. Well, they're both about 0.5, so 0.5 squared.
It's about half.
Yeah, it's about a half. how do we get a Gini of 1? Sorry, going back to this example. How would we get a Gini coefficient of 1? This is kind of a trick question. Kind of. Theoretically, this is a bad example because you can't. To get 1 out of this, there would have to be 0 people in either category. It could be 1 minus 0 minus 0 would be 1. You can't do that. So in this case, you can't actually have. So what is, you can't actually have a Gini index of 1 in this case. So we have a baseline Gini coefficient, 0.48. That's where we're starting. That's how pure it is right now. And again, a lower purity is better. Or a lower Gini index, rather, I should probably say it. A lower Gini index means it's pure, it's more pure because it's more split up. I'm trying to use as few terminology as possible because I feel like I'm getting confusing. We want a lower Gini. Lower Gini, good. 0 Gini, great. 0 is the best because then it's very easy to say, oh, cool, 100%, 100, it's easy. So, if we split it between male and female, we are creating 2 subcategories. 2 subcategories. Of the 15 males, we have a survived and a died. Of the 10 females, we have a survived and a died. What is the Gini coefficient for each one? Each of these has a Gini coefficient. And you calculate it the same way as you would with the 25 people. Same survived, died, except the difference is the total is no longer 25 people. The total here would be 15. The total here would be 10. If you do the same math with the squared, you will get that the Gini coefficient here for men is 0.23. The Gini coefficient here is 0.32. And that kind of makes sense. This has a lower Gini coefficient because of the 15, this is the closest to being all in one, none in the other. Out of 15 of them, 13 are dead, which is tragic, obviously. But in terms of separation, that's great. Because it's much easier to say, okay, of these 15 people, it's a very good chance that if I choose died, I'll be right. Whereas here, it's still a pretty good chance, but it's not as good. Being an 80% chance of knowing whether or not someone survived is not as good as 13 out of 15. So the Gini coefficient is a little bit higher on this particular split right here. So right now we have 3 Gini coefficients. We have the original, 0.48, and then we have the men and the female Gini coefficients. Is this a good split? We combine the 2 Gini coefficients of male and female, 0.23 and 0.32, with the following coefficient. So we take the Gini of men multiplied by the percentage of men. So this is just going to be 10 over 25. I'm going to write that first. Plus, and this is kind of what you were saying before, very, very close. Instead of multiplying by the number, you're multiplying by the ratio. You take the Gini coefficient of the female and multiply it by the ratio of females. So this is going to be 0.23 times the rate of men, which is 15 over 25, plus the Gini coefficient for women, which is 0.32, times the ratio of women, 10 over 25. And that will give you 0.27. Okay, cool, math. What's the point? Now, I just walked you through an example of, if you split by male or female, you will get, bless you, 0.27 Gini coefficient. So you would say the coefficient of splitting of man and female is 0.27. Take the next 5-10 minutes to calculate, please try it by hand, or by with Wolfram Alpha, calculator, computer. You have a machine in front of you. Try to calculate this, the Gini coefficient for siblings and for class. You will do it the exact same way as we just did with male and female. So you can look back at the equations, which are also up on the board at this point. But, just like we found the 0.27, try to find the Gini coefficient for these two splits. So just take 5-10 minutes. Work alone or with the person next to you. But really try to use the math in the last 3 slides to find these two numbers. So to be clear, there is going to be a Gini coefficient for this row that survived here, for this row, for these, so there's going to be 4 of them. For these two, you're going to combine them into 1, and these two, you're going to combine them into 1. So in the previous example, the top row, the male-female split, the top row, I'm sorry, did I say rows? I said rows, didn't I? Sorry. The females will have a Gini coefficient, the males will have a Gini coefficient, and I combine them to get 0.27. In the siblings, the greater than or equal to 1 will have a Gini coefficient, the 0 siblings will have a Gini coefficient, and it will combine them to get 1 for this split. The class 3 people will have a Gini coefficient, the class 1 and 2 people will have a Gini coefficient, you'll combine them to get the Gini coefficient for this split. So try that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised that he was willing to do stuff, but yes.
What'd you get? Does anyone have a Gini coefficient for the siblings? What do you have for the siblings? What'd you get?
0.48.
0.48, anyone? Confirm or deny?
148.
0.48. Alright. Did anyone get one for class? Yeah. What'd you get?
142.
0.42. So, and you can finish the calculations the next minute, but you should get that the Gini coefficient for siblings is 0.48. The Gini coefficient for class is 0.42. Okay? So what does that mean? What that means is the biggest difference in purity is given by gender. Because it started at 0.48 purity. If you make the split of siblings, you actually have the same purity. If you make the sibling split. If you make the class split, you have a slightly better, it's slightly lower. But if you split on female and male, your Gini, your purity index, drops dramatically by 0.21. So how does it know what split to make? It chooses whatever split has the best increase in purity. It's a very greedy decision at the time. It gets what is the best decision that will put me one step closer to this, the ideal. The ideal is we have everybody in one and everybody else in the other. That's the best split we can have. So it makes whatever choice it has to get closer to that. So it will choose this first. And then how does it continue? It literally just keeps doing it over and over again. All right, so now it does it on gender. Fine, do it again. Try it with siblings and class and this. It tries all these different splits every single time and sees which one has the greatest change in purity for the better. And that's how the decision tree algorithm works. So, we did a pretty good likelihood. Strengths and weaknesses. Well, tell me what you think. What is a strength of decision trees? What do you think is a strength of decision trees? Simplicity in the sense of what?
Sense of understanding.
So interpretability, right? Interpretability. It's very easy to interpret a decision tree. You know, there is some math that goes into it, you know, with proportions and squares and all. Yeah, there is some math that goes into it. But in the end, you say, okay, guys, the best thing we could do is say male or female, because that gets us closer to a better split. People say, okay, that kind of makes sense. I kind of gave it away the second one. Why else is there a strength in decision trees? Not only is it easy to interpret, like, oh, I see what's happening on the board. What else could it tell you? Think of those Gini numbers. What do they represent? What do they quantify? What is Gini?
Accuracy, right?
Not quite accuracy, but in a sense, it is quantifying the split between classes. So Gini is a literal way of saying, if you chose this variable, how much more pure does it get? So one of the big advantages is we can actually use that change in purity to quantify something else, which is how important is this variable? You know, male and female was the first split it chose because it gave the best change in purity. What that means is that male and female is very, very important when we're talking about death and survival on the Titanic. So the Gini index gives us a way of actually quantifying how good predictors are at predicting your response. So I mentioned there were two ways of doing it. There are more than two ways, but Scikit-learn has two built-in ways of quantifying purity. One is called Gini, as you see. The other is called entropy. They are both metrics for quantifying purity. They're calculated in slightly different ways, and we're going to do a lab where we try Gini and entropy in our grid search to see which one actually performs better. I will tell you, in my experience, Gini generally wins out over entropy, generally, but you should always do try both, grid search to try both. But in my experience, Gini tends to win out over entropy. So it provides a degree of interpretability that other complex algorithms don't provide. For example, the random forest is a literal just tagging trees onto one another, and it gets very, very complex, very, very fast, and hard to show someone. Decision trees can be kept very small, and you can show someone very easily. Understanding how it works is foundational to understanding how the much more complex, like the random forest ones, work. Question.
I have a question. What did you mean by Gini wins? Like, how do you quantify winning in this case?
Accuracy. So metrics for classification or regression. So generally, if you hold everything else the same and change between the Gini index and entropy, which is just another formula instead of the minus proportion squared. Generally, if you chose the Gini formula, you end up getting better accuracy in your classification, a lower root mean squared error in your regressions. It just generally, that calculation tends to lead to better metrics. That's all I meant. They're both just different ways of viewing purity. So the real difference is that.
So they would disagree in some cases where like it was kind of like close, which one had a better split. Maybe Gini would say, oh, this classification had a better split.
Yes.
And entropy would say this one does.
Gini, exactly. Gini and entropy is just a parameter
Right.
of decision trees. Just like you say, well, sometimes 5Ks is better than 4Ks in KNN. Sometimes Gini is better than entropy. It's just that with only two of them to choose from inside your learn, it's just that more often than not, Gini wins out over entropy. But you should always do a grid search, which we're going to do. You should always do a grid search to make sure that Gini is in fact the best one out of entropy. So I keep saying random forest, but those aren't the only things that depend on decision trees. Boosted trees is another type of ensembling method that we'll look into. Ada boosts is another one. Bayesian trees. So there are a lot of very complex models that have decision trees as a core foundation. So decision trees are very modern. Decision trees were invented, I believe, in the 80s as well, in random forest. I believe decision trees were invented in 1984, and the random forest was invented in the early 90s, 91, 92. And I'm pretty sure they both came out of the Bell Labs in Jersey. The one thing Jersey has. No. It's okay, I'm from Jersey. Big disadvantage. Decision trees perform worse than most sophisticated modeling techniques because they have a very high variance. So the reason decision trees are used as a foundation for more complex models is because people loved the interpretability of the decision tree. That was game changer. Because up until this point, you had to understand p-values, or you have to know how the slope of the linear regression works, you have to know all these different complicated math formulas. There was no simple way of just saying, this is the most important feature. This is the second most important feature. This is the third most important feature. With the advent of the Gini and the entropy index, there was now a way to very easily quantify for each predictor how much it's actually doing to change the purity. People loved that. The problem was that the high variance of the decision tree, it was somewhat unreliable as a model in practice. Because if you let it loose in the wild, it would very quickly deteriorate because it needs to keep getting retrained and retrained because of its high variance. Does that make sense? So the interpretability was great. Gini and entropy, fantastic. High variance, not so great. So what they did was, in order to keep the interpretability, the feature importance, and to lower the variance, they added complexity. So random forest is just 100 decision trees put together. A boosted tree is just a decision tree with weights on it. So it's harder to go down some routes easier to go down other routes. So this is a way of trying to lower the variance while maintaining Gini and entropy, while maintaining the actual formula that quantifies how well a predictor does. They wanted a way to lower the variance without affecting interpretability. That was the key. Which is why, in the last 20 years, most advents in machine learning and supervised learning are honestly using a decision tree as some kind of foundational base. Let's see it. So my goal for the actual class, cool. The goal is to finish most of my code before the break and then to work on the lab on the second half. The lab is fun because there's 2 parts. It's the same data, but this is the first time that I'm almost giving you nothing besides directions. I'm importing some stuff, not everything, and I'm reading in data and I'm giving you a seed so that if you work together you get the same numbers. And the UN data. I'm also asking that you don't start right away with trees. I am asking that you're going to start with a cluster analysis, k-means. I don't remember k-means. Now you're going to have to remember k-means a little bit. Please remember, I said unsupervised learning was sometimes a great way to begin supervised learning. So I have some guiding questions for cluster analysis to kind of lead you in the right directions of, oh, this variable seems interesting. I wonder if that's going to be important. And then we'll use decision trees to actually quantify how important they are. Anyways, that will come in time. Where did my Python console go? All right. All right, I'm looking at 13 trees. .py. As soon as I connected that kernel. Here, kernel. Here we go. Stop it. There we go. So I have my imports. I have from sklearn import tree. I'm going to import 2 things from tree later, the decision tree classifier and the decision tree regressor as the regression algorithm. I will use pandas, NumPy, train test split. I will use some metrics as always, and I will also use matplotlib to visualize some of the metrics. So we will start with Titanic. So it'll become fairly commonplace now to begin with the data set that we've seen before, and then later as your practice, we'll start with the data set that you've never seen before. So we'll start with Titanic because we're familiar with Titanic. And I'm also going to create a selection of the variables, which is a survived, p-class, sex, age, sibling, spouse, parent, child. I'm going to call that D. Now, I have a mini exercise. We're going to check for missing values in all columns, which you've probably already done at one point in your life on the Titanic data set, so this should be fairly simple. Check for missing columns, convert everything to numerics. So, for example, sex is going to be something you're going to want to convert into numerics, 1 or 0, true or false. Fill in the missing values using the mean value. No need to do the mean of men and the mean of women, just the mean is fine to save some time. I had to remember to fill in a column, the command. Explore some of the data to identify trends and create a proxy variable. And again, the solutions are all down below. But try to create a proxy variable to determine whether or not their spouse was on board. So start with these 3. These are the 3 ones that I want to make sure that everyone can do before we move on. Check for missing values, so figure out where they are. And by the way, use D, which is just the selection of survived, p-class, sex, age, sibling, spouse, parent, child. In those, find all the missing values, convert anything that's not a number to a number, and then fill in missing values where you see fit. And I have solutions down below as well. So work on that for the next 5-10 minutes. Again, you've definitely done this at one point in your life on this data set. So it's a practice on how do we clean data that we're bringing in for the first time. So it's just going to give you a warning location. He goes through the map. So they're going to the map. These variables, or he's going to compare to it's just telling you that like, hey, you're using it as a list. Just be careful. Because there are some differences between lists and series. So this is good practice because this is kind of like the stuff that is hopefully going to be muscle memory by the time you're done with this class. Okay, gotta check for null values, fill in things that are not numeric, and then fill in the null values. So this is a very good practice. And just, this is what this is the first steps that you're going to take whenever you read in data. Yeah. It's nothing. Yeah. Yeah. So if you run a d is null dot sum, you'll get that the only missing column with all the column with missing values is h. of which there are 177 missing values. I take it one step further in this next line of code that uses two group bys, kind of a complicated one, but it might be nice for you to have and try to apply to your own data sets. It actually will give you percentages of missing values for each sex and class. So essentially, of the first class females, only 10% of the data is missing. Of the second class females, 2.7% are missing. Of the third class females, 41% of the data is missing. Likewise for the men, there's 20% of the first class is missing, 9% of the second class is missing, 37% of the third class males have missing values. So this is kind of showing you even a further breakdown of where the values that are missing are. So that's one. Check for missing values is done in this line of code. Here are the missing values. Convert all variables to numeric. You could have done this in several ways. The map function, you could have done a logical comparison. I chose a np.where. So I use np.where, and sometimes it'll give you a warning, but don't worry about these warnings. They're not going to break anything, so you're good. Which will turn the males and females into ones and zeros. Simple enough. So there's many ways you could have done that. I chose np.where. And I'm going to fill the NA, so my age column, I'm going to fill it with the mean of the age column. That's it. So using the isNull sum will find my missing values. I can convert it using np.where, and then I'll use the fill NA to input the missing values with the mean of the rest of the numbers. Simple enough. Very basic filling, checking for errors. I included some more complicated code to kind of see the more breakdown, but it's not, this line of code is not necessary. Well, now they're all zero because I just filled them. But that's good too. They're all zero. So exploring some of the trends, we have our value counts. So of the people who survived, there are 342, 549 died. This is the survival rate of that same number. So 38% of people lived. If you group by sex, 74% of females, remember I mapped female to 1, male to 0. So 74% of the females survived, 18% of the men survived. What, do you want to say something? I'm pretty slow. I'm definitely going down the ship. Here, similar thing by class. So again, no real shocker here. 63% of the first class people lived, 47% of the second class, 24% of the third class lived. So again, no shockers so far in the class. Grouping by sex and class. Men, so 0 is men. First class men, 36% survived. Second class men, 15% survived. Third class men, 13% survived. Interesting. Women, first class women, 97% of first class women survived. 92% of second class women survived. And 50% which sounds low, but compared to the 13% of their male equivalent, 50% of third class women survived. So we can already see, before we do the decision tree, that sex and class definitely seem to have some kind of a big impact on whether or not someone survived. And again, this is probably not shocking to you as we've been dealing with this data before. And we've been able to say, it seems as though, but with the decision tree, we'll be able to truly quantify using the Gini index, it is definitely making a difference. So I made a proxy variable to see if your spouse was on board. It's very similar to what we had on the homework. All it is if you're above the age of 18 and you have a sibling or a spouse, I said you had your spouse on board. That's it. If you're above 18 and you have at least one sibling spouse, I just made a variable saying you have a spouse on board. Is that completely accurate? No. Does it do the trick? Let's find out. So I can do a basic value count. So apparently 205 people meet that criteria. 205 people are above the age of 18 and have at least one sibling spouse on board. Fine. Now I'm going to group by class and spouse. So 0 is you don't have a spouse. 1 is you do have a spouse. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more in case. Of the first class people, if you had a spouse, you had a 74% chance. If you didn't, you had a 57% chance. Second class, 47, 47. Third class, 24, 25. So I should put this on the second line. Having a spouse appears to increase survival pretty much in the first class only. If you kind of start thinking about the purity of this split, the fact that both of them have a 24% chance survival isn't amazing. The fact that in the first class, one is 54%, the other is close to 50%, that's a higher split. That's a bigger difference. So it seems that the spouse variable has a greater impact only in the first class. And again, the spouse variable is very crude. I didn't take into account the misses thing. I didn't take into account anything else. I literally just said if you're above 18 and you have at least one sibling or spouse on board, you have true for spouse. And that actually makes a difference in the first class. So let's all make a model out of this. So survived, as always, will be our response, true or false. I'm going to delete survived from D because I don't want it to be a predictor of whether or not someone survived. So right now, D is going to be 6 columns: class, sex, age, sibling, spouse, parch, and spouse. Spouse is now one of my variables. I have 6 predictors, 1 response. My response is categorical. What type of predictive model is this going to be? If my response is categorical, what is it called? Classification. No trick question there. Classification. So let's split it into our train test split. Again, nothing new here. Now we have 70% of our data in our training, 30% in our test. I'm going to create a decision tree classifier by instantiating first. sklearn, same format as always. I will make a tree.decision tree classifier. I will set the random state so we all get the same number, and I have to set the random state to get the same number because there is an element of randomness. And I will say max depth 2. When I say max depth equals 2, that means there is only going to be room for 2 rows of that tree. So it's only going to be able to make 2 choices. That's what I'm saying. It's only going to be able to make 2 choices at max. Which sounds like it might not be the best, but let's go ahead and, whoa. I think someone else just tried to log on to my thing. And I can't, oh. Maybe I'll win. There we go. That was strange. I always wonder what happens if you try to, I guess I could just do that. But so I'll make a decision tree, C tree, fit it to my training. Nothing new here. It's just another classifier at this point. Fit it to my training. I'm going to make a list of features, which is just P class, sex, age. It's just the columns. It's just a list of columns. And I'm going to use it a little bit later, but it's just a list of the predictors. So the classes that it figured out are 0 and 1, right? 0 being died, 1 being survived. So it figured out automatically the classes. It can have more than 2 classes. It's not necessarily a binary classifier. It can have 3 or more. So it figured out there's 0 and 1. Those are the only 2 classes. So the way this works, so again, remember here's our features. So when I want to predict proba 1, 1, 25, 0, 0, 0 in order, 1 is the class, 1 is the sex, 25 is the age, no sibling parent, no sibling spouse, no parent children, no spouse. So who is this person? Describe this person to me. Yeah, describe to me this person. No parent child on board. She's a 25-year-old first class female with no one else on board. Let's see how well she's gonna predict to do. Now remember, when I do predict proba, it's gonna give me the percentage, the probability of each class. 0 being did not survive, 1 being survived. So, first class woman, 25 years old, seems to have a 95% chance of survival. And again, if we do just predict, it will just give us the one with the higher percentage. Again, nothing new here. Predict proba, predict fit, there's nothing new I've done in terms of classification. Now, can someone explain to me this side of the room, if you don't mind? Can someone on this side of the room tell me about 3025000 here? Tell me about this person. Someone over on this side of the room, tell me about this person, 3025000. Tell me about it. Person.
Third class,
Third class single
single male.
male, sorry,
Who's 25 years old.
25-year-old third class single, quote unquote, because her spouse is 0, with no parent child on board and no sibling spouse on board. Let's predict proba. Ooh. Yeah. 87% chance of class 0, which is death. 14% chance of class 1. And again, if we just predict the same thing, 0. That's his prediction. Nothing new here. Here's the new part. This does not exist on any of the other models we've done so far. C-tree.feature importances. What is that? It's a bunch of decimals. Hooray. How do we interpret them? In a row, and I'm going to put it in the data frame so you can see a little bit better, but in a row, these are the importances of each feature as determined by the Gini index. As determined by the quantified Gini index, this is how important it thinks each feature is. I'm going to go ahead and put them in a data frame so they're a little easier to read. So, from top to bottom, it's telling me sex, absolutely. Sex is absolutely the most important. Followed by class. Okay, after sex, after we've gotten that out of the way, class is totally the next most important thing. Once you've just established class, age. Everything else, no, not so much, actually. I actually only need these 3. This is a great way to select which of your features you want to continue with. Because if your decision tree, again, this is not a tell-all, end-all way, this is how you decide, but it's probably the easiest way we've determined so far to see which ones are actually important. We could pretty easily say, yes, sex is obviously very important, so is class, so is age, those are very important things, but we've never been able to quantify it like this before. We've never been able to sit down and say, wow, sex seems to be way more important than P class and age, whereas they're obviously very important. These 3, according to the decision tree, played 0 part. Why? There's 2 answers to this question. Both of them are correct. Why do you think that sibling spouse, parent child, and spouse has 0 importance? That can mean 1 or 2 of 2 things. Why do you think it has 0 importance, all 3 of them?
Because we only set it to go a certain number of levels deep.
I was hoping someone would say that second, but yes. If you recall, one of the features I told it was you're only allowed to make 2 choices max. So it said, okay, fine. Of the 2 choices, these 3 are the most important. That is absolutely one reason why 3 of them are 0. Because it only got to do the following. It only had to start here with 1 decision, then it had 2 other decisions to make as well. And then from here, it had to say some percentage. So with those only 3 decisions, it only had 3 things to choose from. But that still doesn't mean, it still says something that the other 3 weren't used. This is still a good indication that sex, class, and age are the 3 top most important variables. But we want to see what happens if we let it go further. What if we allowed it to ask more questions? So before we do that, I'm going to predict my entire test set, and I'm going to get my accuracy, because so far we haven't even done that yet. We looked at the importances, and it's like 72, whoa, 72%. Not amazing. We have a confusion matrix, which we've seen many times before. I've also added row names and column names, so here's the predict, here's the actual. This is different. It's the same confusion matrix. We can do our AUC metric. 0.778, not so great. Does anyone remember the ROC AUC metric? What is it really good at doing? First of all, can someone define for me why the ROC is very different than other classification metrics? There's two ways that's very, very different that I'm thinking of at least. How is ROC AUC very, very different than other classifications, like accuracy, sensitivity, specificity? What does ROC do or not do that the others are different? That's right.
The ROC doesn't change regardless of the features you use for the same set.
Why? No, this is good. So there's
Because ROC is calculated using all of the features.
yes. Also, it's calculated using all of the thresholds. When I say accuracy, I have to sit down and say, you have to at some point say what is true, what is false. If you're going to define accuracy, you have to sit down and say, I'm sorry, above 75% true, otherwise false. You have to say that. But in ROC, you don't. In ROC, you get to say, try 1,000 thresholds. And then give me one number that just tells me, how well is this decision tree doing in general? How well is the decision tree doing in general if I choose a large, wide variety of thresholds? So, that's one. So that's what it does. That's why it's wildly different than classification or other metrics like accuracy, sensitivity. What is it really good for? Absolutely nothing. Anyone reference? Really? Or what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Look it up. What is it? What is ROC AUC really good for? We did it last class. What is it really good at doing?
Comparing models.
Comparing against different models. Logistic versus decision tree. KNN versus naive Bayes. ROC is very, very good at comparing across models because of the non-assumption of the thresholds. Because what you can say is, okay, well, I want to compare a 50% split on naive Bayes versus an 80% split in logistic regression. That's really annoying. The ROC AUC combines all of that to say, okay, here's how well in general your decision tree does. Here's how well in general your logistic regression does. The logistic regression has a way better AUC. Now I'm going to fine-tune logistic. This is how I fine-tune things. Now I'm going to fine-tune my logistic regression. So the ROC is really good at comparing across models. Once you've chosen a model, now you're going to go with accuracy, sensitivity, specificity to choose what's the best threshold, what's the best max step, what's the best parameter. So generally we choose ROC across models, and once we're decided on a model, we're focusing on it for a little bit, we choose something like accuracy. Also, ROC AUC, if you watch the videos and listen to me, what kind of classification does it only do? Does it only tell you about? A very specific type of classification it's only allowed to do. Binary. Can only do true or false answers. Can only do true or false. The ROC AUC can only tell you about binary classifiers. That is the one drawback to an otherwise amazing metric of classification. So decision trees have notoriously high variances, so what can we do to better estimate the out-of-sample error in a high variance model? So what is that thing we learned that helps you estimate how well a high, because here's the thing, I can do a train test split, 100 times. What's going to happen in a high variance model? Because a train test split keeps taking random samples, what happens in a high variance model?
Changes.
The metrics are wildly different each time. So how do we prevent against that? How do we overcome that rather? Absolutely. Cross-validation. Cross-validation is a fantastic way of predicting out-of-sample error, especially for high-variance models. Not just for high-variance models, especially for high-variance models. Cross-validation is so, so important. So, I'm going to bring logistic regression into the game here. I'm going to make a log reg. I'm going to make a decision tree with max depth 2. And I'm going to use the cross-val score to compare logistic regression versus decision trees. In general, which one will do better? So I'll import my cross-val score. I will do a cross-val score with logistic regression using D, my data, and survive, my response, 10 times using the ROC. So my log reg will give me 85. Okay, cool. In general, how well does my decision tree do? 80. I thought this was a really good complex model. Remember, decision tree was set to only have 2 rows of decisions. So what if we had more? Oh my God, this is crazy. Well, hold on, before we do that, let's let Kanan and Naive Bayes join the party. Your next exercise. Take 5 minutes. Import, the solutions are obviously down below, but try not to use them. Import Kanan. Import Naive Bayes. And do a cross-val score for those 2. And compare to the logistic regression and decision tree. You will end up with 4 numbers, 2 of which you already have. Your logistic regression AUC is 85, or 0.853. Your decision tree is 0.801. So get those same numbers for KNN and Naive Bayes. Are you not waiting?
Well, I am, but it's more of like, everything's broken. Spider just kept acting weird and nothing was working. I think there was back so I just started looking at what it was at the beginning. It's still
Interesting.
yes.
There's stuff in there, I can't.
Oh, that's good.
But I didn't change something, this is what he's, he's able to run it, so I don't understand. I couldn't follow a lot of his calculations down. A lot of things that still relying on this, on the feature, this feature is very. So I don't know what he did. So I made sure I was making edits. I just figured I locked the whole file in. It's gonna be, I mean,
And then it totally just makes it up. It's just like a call.
well, you need that thing, right? Yeah, I need that thing, right?
But why did it become an array?
Yeah, I didn't want your file, but yeah, I thought it did something that I did, so I pulled everything down.
Well, the easiest one is this.
For some reason, you were going to treat this, but it turned my panda into an ND array, and ND array doesn't have a function called the bringing in the pair columns.
How's the this? So I said,
Oh, it's a.
instead of doing right, or strain, I said T dot.
That's the reason. Lotus 0.16 is 0.15 scikit-learn.
Which one do you have?
Scikit-learn version is different.
No,
way affected.
I didn't know that was the difference.
Yeah.
That's an update.
I'm sorry, I did. I'm going to downgrade.
What?
Scikit-learn version is different. If you do conda update,
So it's
Scikit-learn.
All right, guys, there appears to be a version error. I have scikit-learn 16, whereas apparently in 15.2-ish, this line of code won't work. To fix it, I either recommend updating your scikit-learn by doing a conda upgrade, like conda,
Update, conda update.
just conda update,
Update scikit-learn, scikit-learn.
scikit-learn, or scikit-learn, wow. Scikit,
I think scikit-learn and then dash learn.
yes. So say conda update scikit-learn, it'll ask you to upgrade. I didn't realize that was a problem. And then it'll ask you, do you want to upgrade these things? Apparently there's also an even newer version that I'm not going to do.
Should maybe have that.
Should we do it?
So here's that command again. You do this in your terminal. Conda up, nope. Oh my god. Conda update scikit-learn.
It's a fast moving project. They're trying to integrate more and more with pandas. So
That's not like that.
So proceed, yes, right?
That's why I recommend to not upgrade. The reason I did was, oh, it's so embarrassing. I did it because of my.
We all just downloaded this like recently.
I know. I only did it a couple days ago because for my company I needed the updated scikit-learn for another completely different reason. And then I just didn't realize that it affected this code too. Which is why I generally, for example, which is why I still use Bucosoup 3 and not 4. I think 4 is way here. So that's just the way it is. So it's just a conda update. Which version do you have? 16.
But now we're gonna have 16.
Yes.
Unless it's
So what was the original
Yes.
function?
No. No. It won't.
So why don't we
because
want
only wants to select a few.
They should be the same.
All the columns.
Between 16, they should be the same.
What was it originally what you had up there?
This is originally what it was. All I did was replace X-train with D.
By not, you like chosen the top and the bottom. So
Wait, from when we downloaded scikit-learn like a month ago, it went from 15.2 to 16.
Apparently. Apparently. It's a fast-moving world.
Why did they actually execute everything?
yeah,
Yeah.
You may have to restart this all on the right side. Because
Yeah.
otherwise the input will not be much.
It was like, you should probably say
Oh, shit.
that. It was random.
I just
A lot of there.
reopened it. But it's not
What was that thing that helps you figure out what's the image search? Yeah. I'm looking at 06 model evaluation.
No, that should be there.
I don't know, I'm getting an error just on our keyboard tree.
YouTube? What is this?
Right.
Scikit-learn.
Yeah.
Oops.
Just take the features from D.
Hmm?
Can't they just take the features from D instead of X-Train?
They can, but I thought it'd be better for them to upgrade. And now it's not better for them to upgrade. Okay. First, I'm going to join your pain by upgrading so that there's a fire under my butt to fix it. Okay. here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna take a break, a 15-minute break, because it's 8. I'm gonna fix this in 15 minutes or less, and then we're gonna get right back to it when we get back. Bless you.